Good afternoon, everyone. We're delighted to have you joining today's HKUST Alumni Entrepreneur event. I'm Ariel, a fourth-year UST student and MC of today's event. For this event's rundown, we will first be inviting our speakers to introduce their startup journey one by one, then opening the floor for discussion and a Q&A session. This is an interactive event, and we want you to share your thoughts with us, ask questions, and we are also on Facebook Live. So welcome our online audience to join us during the upcoming discussion. Now, before we proceed, I would like to give you a brief introduction and ask you a question. How many of you are UG students? Please raise up your hand. Wow, okay. What about PG students? And any alumni? Okay, there you go. Most of you are UG students. Still got some time before being a graduate, but you know that our relationship doesn't end with UST afterwards, right? One of our co-organizers is the Alumni Office, which engage our alumnus around the world and support our alumni-to-be through various programs, such as career talks, entrepreneur resources, funding for student initiatives such as startup, and exchanging program, or even athletic developments. And if you want to know what life is like after graduate, you can join their newly launched program, A Coffee for Your Thoughts, which matches UG students and alumni for a casual meeting. You can check this out on the website, just right behind me, the PPT. The another co-organizer is the Hong Kong UST Convocation. How many of you have heard of that? HKUST Convocation? Don't be shy. Well, okay, well, we got one here. She's actually one of the members of the HKUST Convocation, because we are all going to be the HKUST Convocation member after graduate. And I too didn't do it myself before. But Convocation is actually serving as a bridge between our alumni and HKUST. It's administered by a standing committee, elected by alumni to support our university for its betterment. They also represent our alumni in the University Council and other key university events. So now, you know who's behind this event, and you know how you can stay connected with UST after graduation. We're almost ready to start our sharing session, which is very exciting. But do you remember the souvenirs? The memo pad and the pen, what to do with that? Well, each of you here can come with different objectives. You can just want to check out what startup is, or interested in the technologies. But we want you to be inspired by the stories of our alumni, so that one day, when you're pursuing your own startup dream, you can be more prepared. And we want you to use the memo and the pen to jot down your thoughts while our speakers are sharing, specifically answering the following questions. Question 1. What do you think is the most difficult part of the startup experience? Question 2. What do you appreciate most after hearing the 3 entrepreneur stories? Well, don't be shy. Please write down your thoughts as soon as you got them in your mind. Our student helper will stand aside to help collecting your thoughts. And when all the speakers have finished their sharing, we will pick up some memos from you and invite our speakers to respond to them. So get ready with your memo paper, and let's begin our sharing session. Today, we're very glad to be inviting 3 of our alumni from different schools, engineering, science, and business, to share about their startup journey with us. Let's begin with Dr. Nillson Zhu, the founder of Expresii, an advanced digital painting system. But before that, he was our graduate from the School of Engineering, majoring in computer engineering with 2 more degrees in computer science, an MPhil and a PhD. His work on brush stimulation was started during his student days at UST. But how did it pave the way to now his startup eventually? Let's have Nillson tell us more about his startup inspirations and experience. Nillson, please.
Thanks for the introduction, Ariel. Now I'm going to share with you what I have gone through over the years so that hopefully you'll get some inspiration. So some 20 years ago, I was just like some of you, just starting your campus life here at UST. After my undergraduate in computer engineering, I decided to go for enroll into the MPhil studies, trying to focus to spend 2 years trying to make a digital Chinese brush. What is great about doing research is that you are doing something new and you're pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. So in 2005, we purchased a paper on the real-time simulation of Chinese ink, which is, at the time, my supervisor think is impossible. It was just such a breakthrough that even big companies like Adobe would approach us. So they wanted to hire me and also to put our work into Photoshop. I thought, well, that's a great idea because ultimately we need to bring our technology to the hands of the users. Otherwise, it would just be a research project, a research paper, and research prototype. For some reason, Adobe ended up not hiring me. But then I think that's fine because not being hired by one company means you're open to work for other companies. So so 1 year later, and I got an email from Microsoft, and they asked me if you were interested to join them. So I did join them, and I went to the U.S. Work at their headquarters. After working there for 3 years, I decided to come back and work on my own. And then I spent another several years making a new painting program that I call Expresii. And earlier this year, so we were invited by Microsoft to take part in a video shoot for their new product. And I was told that Expresii is the most impressive app among all the apps that they had invited. And those includes those from Adobe, Corel, and Autodesk. The CVP of Microsoft, Panel Panai, likes our work so much that he would talk about it during the global launch event on stage. I was so glad that we're able to bring something new to the table, technology-wise, and at the same time, be able to introduce our traditional art to the world. Okay. By the way, that's my calligraphy. So, looking back, not being hired by Adobe may not be a bad thing after all. Because if they did hire me, I might just stay there forever and never come back. So I never have a chance to work on my own and continue to develop our art traditions in the digital world now. And earlier this year, I was lucky enough to have met a very talented animator who made this test short using our software. So once I saw this thing, I knew, hey, that's actually one way we can do a new kind of animation using an ink painting style. Look at the fluffy tail. It's only possible using our software because if you're using a real piece of paper, it's really hard to make things that are consistent. So only with technology, only with software, we can do this. So now together with a veteran in the entertainment industry, who is also an alumnus of UST, we are now going to make a full-length feature animation using our technology. Well, I'm not sure if we will become a commercially successful or not, but what I'm sure is we will work hard for that. Okay. Now let's move on to the demo part of the presentation. Okay. Okay, so this is our program, which is called Expresii. First, I would like to show you something like this. So this is a design that I made out of the character G. You know, G. Okay, let me. Okay, you see I have a digital brush there, a virtual brush. And when I stroke, okay, this is the character G, which means chicken or rooster. And I make the design out of this. And because you see, this is a new surface pen, I can rotate, I can tilt the brush, so that you see the virtual brush is moving according to how I hold the brush. So depending on how I hold and stroke, you see each of the strokes are different, just like you're using a real brush. Okay. Okay. So using such a tool, you can use a computer to write or do calligraphy like this. And let me just quickly show you. So you can do like change the design quickly, and even do a little animation. Okay, this one. Okay, this is an animation that I made. You see that the chicken claw is moving. So if some of you are teachers out there, please consider using this technology in your classroom so that your kids would have fun learning Chinese character. Okay, so this is calligraphy and Chinese character. Let me quickly show you another example. Okay. So Gandalf. Gandalf is a fictitious character in Western culture, but here we paint it in the Chinese ink painting style. So you can see, maybe I can rotate it like this. So I can zoom in, you see the details, the rendering. I particularly like this kind of art because it's merging between Western culture and Eastern culture. Okay, and everything's still live. I can let me just pick some. Okay. Let me pick some water. I increase the amount of water, and then I pick a clear brush. I can put down more water there. You can see the ink is still flowing. Okay, in real time. And of course, because it's digital, you can always undo. Okay, I press Z, you can see undo and redo, just like that. Okay. Lastly, I would like to show you one more. Okay. Okay, that's one. So this piece is based on an existing art that is painted more than half a century ago by a Chinese painter. So when I zoom in, you can still see the details of the strokes. I can still add strokes to it if I like, say, decrease the amount of water, and then okay, you can still keep painting on it. So you see, what is old is new again in the digital world. So I hope with this technology we can promote our traditional art and also help people learn our art tradition, and also to further develop the art tradition in this digital domain. So that's all I want to say to show you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nillson. Next, we will have Dr. Cathy Jim, Director of RHT Industries Limited, who has both her bachelor's degree and PhD degree in chemistry. Her startup journey also started at HKUST, as she discovered an existing air purification technology at the university and determined to commercialize it. Today, this technology could be found in places like shopping malls, the landfill data collection centers, etc. But how did she achieve all that? Let's have Cathy to share her experience with us. Cathy, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ariel. And thank you for Nelson's presentation. Yeah, that's really impressive. Yeah, sorry, I prefer standing. Yeah, okay. I'm Cathy Jim, and I was graduate in Hong Kong UST Department of Chemistry like many, many years ago. Let's not talk about which year I graduated. And then after my degree, I was just checking if my year of graduation is listed here. So just to double check. And after my degree, I continued my study in the Department of Chemistry, and then I got my PhD degree. Yeah. So after, or in the last year of my PhD study, I start to think whether I should remain in the university and keep on doing research and then finally become a faculty, or should I choose something? Should I try something that I haven't tried yet? So when I'm doing the study in the Department of Chemistry, I found that there's one technology called NCCO, where the full name is nano-confined catalytic oxidation. So this name I know is very chemistry itself. Yeah. So I found out that this is a really good technology, and it has already been patented, having invention patent. So that's why in my final year, I was kind of struggling whether I should continue my research or should I try something new to explore the possibility of NCCO. So I choose the latter. So that's why after my graduation, I entered this company, the RHT, to help to develop or help to promote this technology. So before I talk about what NCCO is, probably I need to give you some basic or background information. When we're talking about some odor removal or VOC removal, etc., etc., the most commonly used technology is activated charcoal. So as you all know, maybe we'll find some charcoal. We can put some charcoal in our shoe cabinet, in our fridge, or like more than 90% of the air purifier find the market is using activated charcoal. So what is activated charcoal actually? So it actually is a material or a substance with a very high, a large surface area, which it can absorb a lot of pollutants inside, but there's no selectivity. So that's why, apart from absorbing those pollutants that we categorize as pollutants, it also absorbs water. So that's why in Hong Kong, which the humidity is quite high, sometimes reach 100%. So the lifetime of charcoal will be a lot shorter. There's another disadvantage of charcoal is that actually charcoal only stores the pollutants inside it without any treatment at all. So charcoal has its own capacity. after using for some time, all the capacity will be used up. So yeah, in a professional term, we call it saturated. It can no longer absorb any more pollutants. So after saturation, it starts to have secondary pollution. So you can imagine it's like a garbage bin. You keep putting some garbage inside without cleaning it, without replacing it. And then someday, the garbage bin just become full. And if you keep dumping the bad things inside, it will spill up. Same for carbon. When the charcoal filter is saturated and you don't replace it, it will start to have secondary pollution, which means that all those pollutants, all those bad things, VOC, etc., will start to migrate from the filter into the environment. So one really life example is that when you try to put some charcoal in the fridge or in a shoe cabinet, after using for like 1 or 2 months, you try to smell the charcoal cartilage. You really smell those bad things, those bad smells. Why is it so? If the charcoal can really trap all those bad things, all those smell inside, you won't be able to smell it, right? Why you can start to smell it is because the charcoal can no longer trap those pollutants inside. It starts to have secondary pollution. So what's the bad point about that? As I explained before, more than 90% of the air purifier nowadays found in the market is using activated charcoal. And now because of like news and internet, etc., we know that there are a lot of carcinogenic, which is cancer-causing pollutants around us. So that's why we know that we need to do something. So most of us, first thing is we buy an air purifier to protect ourselves, protect our family. But the worst thing is that like when you have a new house, when you have a newly renovated house, you can smell those bad smells, those formaldehyde, those toluene, those silence, etc. You know that's bad things. So that's why you don't stay inside. And then you go to buy an air purifier and put inside the room and then do the treatment for like 2 or 3 weeks. After that, you think that the room become less odor or it's better. It's suitable for you to stay in. But the fact is that actually the charcoal filter store all those bad things inside. But there's another problem here is that most of the users don't know that actually the charcoal filter need to be replaced. So what's next? When you start to live in that house, the charcoal filter is actually already saturated and it starts to re-emit all those pollutants inside the room. And when you stay inside the room, you live inside, you absorb a lot of this kind of pollutants without noticing. So this is the bad thing of activated charcoal. So let's go back to NCCO. What is NCCO? NCCO is actually a combination of, let me try to do it less chemistry way. Sorry. Yeah, NCCO is actually a combination of oxidation and absorption, which means charcoal, and then we just destroyed it. So we use our filters to absorb the pollutants first, so to immediately reduce the concentration inside the room. And then our system will have some oxidant. Oxidant can also enter the filters, and then because all the VOCs are composed of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, so that's why they can be oxidized. So our system, our filter, will oxidize all the VOCs into water and carbon dioxide. And then the water and carbon dioxide will leave the filter and then generate another site. The filter is regenerate, so it can keep absorb new VOC and then decompose it, so it has new space for new VOC. So that's why it's a cycle. So NCCO in lab, it doesn't have a lot of time, because the filter itself is just a catalyst. It provides a space for the VOC and the oxidants to react with each other and then finally become water and carbon dioxide. So in this, I've joined this company for like many years. Yeah, try not to mention how many years. We have tackled a lot of different cases in Hong Kong. For example, there is a Tseung Kwan O there's a commercial area in Tseung Kwan O which is next to the landfill. Yeah, you all know about that? No. Okay. Anyway, so there is a commercial area near the landfill. So you all know about the news near Chengguan, all that those families already smells bad smell coming from the landfill. Yeah, not a spot. Exactly. Yeah. So actually, those commercial area is much closer to the landfill. So that's why their fresh air unit will directly intake the air from the landfill into the building. You can imagine working next to a landfill or inside the landfill every day. So that's horrible. They have tried to use various kind of technology, including like charcoal, UV light, PCO, etc. But due to different problems, they cannot find a total solution until they ask us to provide a solution. So we add our system inside the fresh air unit to make sure that all the air is purified and cleaned before entering the building. So this is a very interesting project. And we also work with a lot of like large companies like MTR, like the Hong Kong government, like IFC, like hospital, etc. Maybe I can talk about more examples later in our Q&A section. So before I end my presentation, actually I have a small demonstration here, which I need 1 or 2 volunteers. Who wants to try this demonstration? Okay, you're the first one, and then you please. Okay, you may need to come close to the stage. Yeah, it won't explode, no worries. So this is the filter I'm talking about. And then this is our demo unit. This is the cartridge, which I will put the filter here. And this is a fan. And then there's some electronic parts here. So this is the air in, and then here, I'll put some really smelly stuff. First is, you're safe right there. It's okay. Okay, I'll use some yellow glue with thinner. Yeah, no worries. I'm also here. No worries. I think you can already imagine the smell. It's a mixture of yellow glue with thinner. You can smell it, right? Right. And then I'm going to turn on the fan before putting the cartridge inside. Please remember the concentration. Here, please. Remember the concentration. You don't remember the concentration, okay? Okay. And then I'm going to put the filter inside. Please try it again. You need to be much closer this time. How do you feel? How do you feel? Odorless. Let's try again. If I do some air leakage, which means not 100% of the air passed through my filter. Come on, try again. You can already imagine. You want to try again?
I can actually smell.
You can actually smell it. Okay, right. So let's have a guess. How many percentage of removal, single pass I'm talking about? You think it is?
95%.
95% is the correct one. Yeah. So that's why NCCO is that strong. Of course, this is a like factory setting. So we need to make sure that all the pollutants, one pass through, and then we eliminate all of them. Of course, for some domestic machine or some other machine, we can tune the removal efficiency by the thickness of filter, by airflow, etc. So this is the powerfulness of NCCO. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Cathy. Finally, we will have Mr. Kevin Wong, once our MBA student, now the CEO and co-founder of the Origami Groups Limited. Kevin has a bachelor's degree from New York University in political science and East Asian studies. His inspirations came from his father, and USD played a role of solidifying his idea into a business plan. Now, he and his team are ready to introduce us the world's first wireless audio device, one on hand. Kevin, please.
Hi guys, so my name is Kevin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Origami Labs. It's good to meet some other UST entrepreneurs. Nillson, I've heard a lot about your project from actually some of the Microsoft guys, so it's great to meet you in person. I think our team, we just graduated just recently, I think, just November last year. We started the business towards the end of our part-time MBA program, so in November 2015. So relatively speaking, I think our company is much younger, less than 2 years old, and we're still working on our first product, which we just launched about a month and a half ago. So I'm just going to take it to the reverse, maybe just do a little bit explaining, sort of show what the product is and run a couple of demos before sort of talking about our very short, but I think very hectic 1.5 year journey. So at Origami Labs, we make the world's first voice assistant ring called Orii. I don't know, have any of you heard of this by any chance? Yes? Orii is basically a device that turns your finger into a voice-enabled extension of your smartphone. So there's a couple of pieces of tech inside. So the first is we have our own custom-designed linear actuator. So it's a magnetic induction actuator that sends sound as a vibration through your finger directly into your ear. So only you as a single user can hear. Then there's our own dual microphone noise canceling system that's on the ring so that it can pick up your voice from this distance. And then there's a firmware on the ring that has basically modified the Bluetooth 4.1 hands-free profile. So it enables text to voice and voice to text through the ring. So what does all that combined allow you to do? So let's say Nillson was to give me a call. Right? My ring would vibrate. There'd be a little light indicating that Nillson is calling. Then I just press a button like this. The cap sense on the side. And then I touch my ear. Then Nillson's voice passes through my finger as a vibration into my ear, so only I can hear. And then when I speak to the ring, Nillson can hear me. So it's more than just for taking and making calls. Obviously, it's a voice-enabled device. So beyond just communication, you're talking about calls, messaging. So for example, we have our own custom software that's on the phone side that allows you to read out a WhatsApp message. So the same thing, if Nillson was sending me a WhatsApp message, then the ring would vibrate. If I want to ignore him, then I just double tap on the ring. If I want to accept the message, I just tap once, and then it reads out the message to me. Then if I want to respond, I press the ring for 3 seconds like this, and then I talk to the ring, and then it sends the message back via voice to text. So Orii is really a product that needs to be tried to be understood. So usually we try to put the demo as early as possible. Is there anyone that wants to give it a try? We'll start here first. So we'll do a couple of demos. Do you mind if you come up? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I'm sure you've never had a guy put a ring on your finger before, right? That's okay, there's always a first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting this ring on your index finger. The sizing is a bit loose, so I'll make sure that the contact is tight. So just so you know, the final version of the product is modular. So we actually supply all 10 ring sizes to the end user. Then what I'll do is I'll guide your finger to the right spot on your ear. So there should be a soft piece of cartilage on your ear. And then I'll start to basically play a file that's going to describe basically what the product is, okay? So I'm just going to make sure that Orii is being a good boy today. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place this ring on Yes. So if you think about, I'll explain a little bit more about why we're making this device, but this is basically the core of it. It's pretty clear. Yeah. We're getting about 3.8K frequency response, so that's on basically middle tier headphone quality. Does anyone else want to give it a try? Oh yeah, come on. So same thing. So then just relax. The same thing. So you just want to cover up your earphone. Cover it up. Yeah, just like that. And then same thing. So you'll feel a slight vibration on your finger. And then you should be able to hear a sound that passes through your finger. Yes. Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. So just explain a little bit more about sort of some of the design methodology, why we ended up wanting to make a product like this. So now obviously Orii, we've done almost, I would say probably, we came from this design thinking methodology. We actually started out here in UST in sort of the local startup ecosystem. I know, Cyrus, the Entrepreneurship Center, has been super helpful. We went through, we were one of the winners for the $1 million competition here at UST. And then we went through this called, at the time, I don't know if they do it anymore, but it's called the Designathon, which was about 2-3 years ago. So when we were creating this product, I mean, we've done about 2.5K, 3K demos, and we did a very extensive beta with about 200-300 users. And then when we put this ring on people's finger, obviously it made people feel like a what do you think? Like a secret agent, right? Makes you feel like you're like the Asian version of 007 or something. But, I think we were really thinking about, this device, it's much more than just a neat gadget for taking and making calls, right? Because if you think about it, behind the way we're using our electronic devices today, it's actually changing. I don't know if you feel it, right? But think about the last, the most recent news, the last iPhone, okay? iPhone 8, iPhone X, great. I mean, if you guys are in hardware design, it's a magnificent piece of hardware, but it's not pushing the limits anymore. The lines are shorter than ever, right? And why is that? It's not because it's not a good piece of tech. It's because screen-based devices are becoming commodities. There's a limited amount of benefit that you're going to get from a 4K screen versus a 1K screen, right? From facial recognition versus a fingerprint scanner, right? It's new tech, but it's not bringing the consumer any new kinds of benefit. And the fact is that all the big guys, from Amazon, Apple, Google, even Microsoft, they all know. And so recently, they started making the shift towards basically smart speaker-based devices. A lot of them are, like Echo or HomePod or Google Home. And that's where we see this device coming in, right? It's because our thesis is that this voice assistant shouldn't necessarily be actually stuck in one fixed location, right? It shouldn't be on a speaker in your kitchen, right? It shouldn't be on the dashboard of your car. It shouldn't even be actually in your phone that can get lost in your pocket or your bag, but actually on your hand, right? Where it's always available, instantaneous, and just one touch of the ear away. So we recently just launched Orii out into the market about 1.5 months ago. I don't know if you've heard of sort of Kickstarter, Indiegogo platform. So we did a crowdfunding campaign. We're a very bootstrapped team, so we spent about 40K US in terms of everything, budget for the production. We did the video ourselves, just a light bit of advertising, and we generated about 400,000 US in sales in our first month, which is pretty good, and already puts us into the top 3 hardware launches in Hong Kong all time. And so we're going to push towards the end of the year, and we're seeing if we can break the 500,000 mark basically the next month, and then we'll see where we end up by the end of the year. So we've received a lot of support, not just from Hong Kong, from around the world. So the Ring is already selling globally to 41 different countries, primarily US, Hong Kong, Korea, Japan, Germany, UK, and Singapore. Very tech-oriented places. And as we continue to build out the product, I can't help but sort of think of what got us here as well. So, as a hardware device or as a hardware product, I think we have a small team of about 12 guys, of which I think about 70% are from UST. Then everyone else is from Hong Kong U. But it's a good mix, I think, of a lot of local people here in Hong Kong. But we wouldn't have gotten here without sort of a lot of the partners that we had to align with to get here. So from people like a great manufacturer like CNI or Pytech that helped us basically finalize a lot of our mechanical design and got a product basically an additional 40% smaller than the prototypes that we were making before, to our recent basically investing partners. Like right now, our current lead investor is Alibaba, and they've really helped us reach scale through distribution, putting us in contact with telcos. And we have some really exciting announcements basically in that now as a business we're starting to move towards distribution of the product. So here in Hong Kong, we should be announcing a exclusive deal with CSL towards the end of this year, and then we'll be working with SoftBank to launch in Japan, and then Sintel in Southeast Asia. So I think when we're talking about sort of the story of why we're doing this, we always focus on two things. So the first is, we mentioned a little bit that my dad is the inspiration for this product. And I think that, my dad, he happens to be, one of the smartest people I know. I'm sure a lot of you guys think the same, of your own parents. But my dad happened to be a technologist at Microsoft in the late 80s and early 90s. So he holds 8 patents in voice-to-text technology. He worked with Bill Gates on making the world's first talking computer in the early 90s. So he basically built out a couple of programs, one which is called JAWS, and he built the early version of Dragon Natural Speaking at Microsoft. And he founded the accessibility team at Microsoft. He also happens to be visually impaired. So he hasn't been able to see since 13. And that's a big reason why he wanted to make talking computers in the first place, right? To enable basically more people like him, more VIs, to be able to access this great piece of technology. So you can almost imagine that I think as an entrepreneur, sometimes the value or the reason why you make something is so important, because there's going to be dark days, right? Or there's going to be tough days. But for us, it's really believing in this screen-free vision. You can imagine Orii is more than a device for taking and making calls, right? Because it can actually help people like my dad, VIs, to be able to access something that have difficulty before, right? These screen-based, touch-based devices. In many ways, and I think as we continue to sort of develop the business, I think we've learned a lot from them as well, right? In that it also works in the reverse, that we as sighted users, I think, have a lot to learn from the way we use our electronic devices. Maybe we too can go a little bit more screen-free. And I think the second thing, which is a lot of what people don't see, I think recently we've been very, very lucky, I think, with how much the ecosystem has supported us and our team. We, especially in the last couple of years, I think startup actually has become a sort of hot topic here in Hong Kong. So it's very, very different now than it was basically a decade ago. But it's not the awards, I think, that I always think back to. It's a lot of sort of the key failures. And I think one story that we tell is I remember the first time I met our lead investor. So the first time I met the Ali team, it was probably the worst meeting I've ever been a part of. We came out of UST, we'd won some competitions here at UST, and we thought, we're ready, we've got like this great product, we've got like a lot of grant money, and we've got like a prototype. And then we went there, and then I think it like hit me when we were in the meeting room waiting for them that, wow, this prototype really sucks. Like it was like 10 times the size, it's like wires like going all over the place. And and the meeting went as well as it could have, which was really bad. So we got a soft rejection from them the very first time we met them. But we stayed persistent. So every month, I got the fund manager's WeChat details and would chat on and off with her every month. And I would go to events and hunt them down and sort of show them the new version of the product. And over the course of 12 months, we made 19 iterations of this ring. And they saw probably 16 or 17 of them. And by the end, when they saw the final versions of the product, they started to believe. And so they came in a very tumultuous time when there were a lot of investors they were speaking with, and it was very messy, and they came in and said that they wanted to help us lead the round and clear things up. And without their help, I don't know, where we would be today and sort of how the launch for the product would have gone. So I think that's the second thing that we always come back to, too, which is, never take no for an answer, never take failure for an answer. For us, we're just a year and a half removed from a lot of you guys. So believe in yourself, believe in sort of what you're trying to build, and if you want to do a startup, then go ahead and do it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Kevin. And thanks to all our free speakers for the engaging stories. It's very interactive, and I believe everyone have enjoyed it. But it's not all they do everything. It's not all their work. Do you remember memo pads and pen? We need your contribution too. Please do write down some of your thoughts and your questions. And remember the 2 questions I have gave you about the most difficult part in a startup experience, or how much you appreciate the most after hearing the free stories. So please write them down, and in a minute we will collect by our student helper. And meanwhile, we will have everyone opening the floor for discussion. And this Q&A session, please treasure it and have your voice heard. We are also opening the floor for our Facebook Live audiences to ask questions. So any questions for our free speaker to respond? Everyone is busy writing down. Maybe I can initiate some questions first. Oh, wow. You guys are really quick. I already got one question here. Okay, so maybe I will ask Kevin first. Just now you have mentioned that you got some MBA students and many USC and also HKU students joining your team. But how do you find these people, and how do you actually realize they are sharing perhaps a similar goal, and so they can contribute to your company? As you also mentioned how they helped you in prototyping and designing. So please, one of our memo paper asked this question: how do you find the right partner? Any tips?
We have a very weird recruiting method. Typically how we do it is, I think, so 2 things. So one is, so personally, I think between the founding team, we have 4 founders. When we do recruitment, or so when we try to meet with teammates, we start the process very, very early. We don't wait for a position to open up. We don't wait for us to post something on a job board to start looking. But when we meet people that we find interesting, we just keep a good connection with them and continue to basically extend the dialogue with them. Whether or not I think that that person is going to join the team or not. I can say almost every single one of the team members has joined the team now. If you ask me the first time I met them whether or not they would join the team, I would put the percentage at like 1%, maybe 2%, right? Especially because a lot of the guys that are on our team are from great industries with great jobs. They're high pay, managing a bunch of people. They have sort of a lot of things that are going well for them already. But that's sometimes where you're going to find some of the most talented people, right? And sort of that process of trying to recruit them into your team, I think, is a very long and but very fun and exciting process. So I'd say the second thing is we do a lot of, and also really weird is I do a lot of volunteering. So just volunteering with contributing back to the ecosystem. So doing, a lot of talks that most people wouldn't, or, going and sort of helping out like high school entrepreneurs, or doing this or doing that. I think you end up meeting a lot of very good people that have very similar values. And sort of through those, I think, activities, you can sometimes organically start some very close and sort of strong relationships that may eventually end up being team members. So.
Got a bunch of memo papers now. Soon I'll be piling up with papers all over my face. But let's thank Calvin for his answer first. Remember, meetings is important, and now you are in the right place for a meeting. Hopefully, it's a good sign. Okay, and we got a question for Cathy. Like just now you have mentioned that you have found an existing product and then you have that determined to commercialize it. But after you have an idea, what have you actually done so then you make this idea into a startup and made it possible and also commercializing it, as I believe it would be very difficult to persuade people buying your things?
Yeah, that's the really difficult part in the beginning. Because we need to persuade people that don't believe in commercial available things and to like accept new things. That's the pretty difficult part, I have to say, because our technology is basically totally different from what others are selling. So in the beginning phase is the most difficult part. So that's why we need a lot of backup data, like experimental data, like trial, like we ask a lot of like friends or industries, etc., to borrow their place for us to do some experiment. Because only showing our clients our lab reports or some controlled environment experiment, that's not enough. Because a lot of clients will say, oh, okay, well, it works fine in your lab. How about in my area? So that's a question mark. So that's why in the beginning, we need to do a lot of this kind of communication, discussion, debates, testing, experiment, etc., etc. And then finally, people start to believe what we are talking about, what we are selling. So that's why I have to say we need to keep doing on what you believe. So for example, I believe that NCCO shall have a very good exposure or development in Hong Kong or in other countries. So that's why I tried. I keep persuading people, like showing them what they need, and then finally we can build up our trust and also our reputation in the industries.
Thank you, Cathy. So seems like it's truly a hard work that you need to give on having reports and debates with people. Now we got a question for Nillson, for Expresii. So you have talked about you want to promote Chinese calligraphy in terms of a value, and we got a question for you. So how do the calligrapher and painters think of your app? And the second would be, would they use your app to do the work instead of using traditional tools? Would them stay away from their traditional tools, but using your app mainly for their work? Like, do you see this trend?
Well, from my experience, there are basically two types of users. One is they are very traditional. They do not want to use computers because I would say they actually have a how should I say it, 包袱 in English. Burden, okay, yeah. So they was always thinking, hey, can you do this the same thing, the same way as I've been using it on the paper? But to me, if you really want everything to be exactly the same and as the real world, and you should just do it there, you should not be doing it digitally. So, but then there are other types of people who are maybe students, and because they never have learned the traditional art, so they're more accepting to the new technology. So they just learn by using it. So if it does it this way, then it's just, okay, we embrace that. Okay. So, so far we have been trying to focus on the people that are kind of the new generations instead of the older ones. That's our experience. Yeah.
For sure. I myself wasn't very great at painting, but because of Adobe Photoshop and also Sketch, I'm now drawing my own stuff, and I'm really proud of myself to having it published and share with my friends. It's really a great channel to spread out art. And then we have another question for Kevin again. This is a bit tough. So a lot of innovation is all for tech guys, like we too have science and engineering background, but here we have business people too. And as a business background, CEO, how do you communicate with your tech guys in your team?
Fundamentally, I think for us as a tech company, the 4 co-founders, we all, I think at several levels, we all understand the tech at the same level. So as a CEO, I don't think you can, and this is my own belief, I know that there are some CEOs that operate a bit differently, but for myself, I like to get my hands dirty, I like to build. So even though, you know, I come from sort of an IR, sort of poli-sci business background, I probably am the first person to prototype. So when it comes to the engineering aspect, you need to teach yourself at least enough skills to be able to communicate with the team and to know enough about the tech to sort of lead the team as a technologist when necessary. So I think, you know, to any business students that are out there, I would just encourage you to get your hands dirty, you know, to build, to really experiment with the tech as much as you can. You'd be surprised. Like today, I think it's so much easier because you have a team that, you know, that's supporting you. So if you have questions, you can always ask, and there's always resources out there. I know for myself, I learned a lot just through. I spent a lot of time just tearing apart products. So we probably bought about 20, 30 different kinds of audio products, and we just ripped them apart. And that's where I think, you know, we made a lot of modifications on specifically the actuator itself, and a lot of those ideas came from, you know, myself, one of my co-founders, because we were trying to sort of build everything from scratch. So I think that process, even though we wasted months of time, still, I think we're still paying sort of a lot of the dividends today.
Thank you, Kevin. And even though being a business student, I believe we can take a lot of common cores. And not only common cores, you can take 4,000 levels or even open source. There's a lot of websites teaching perhaps just computer coding, and you can just learn everything by yourself. And now we got another question for Cathy. So we have 2 startups here, but Cathy, you're a bit different. You're working with RHT, and one of our audience is asking, why did you choose to develop a system with RHT Industries Unlimited instead of starting your own business? And they also ask, how do you find RHT to start this collaboration? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I need to talk about some base background information. Actually, this NCSO technology was invented in Hong Kong UST and then was first commercialized by RHT. But due to the lack of technical person, because currently my partner, which is the boss of RHT, he's a businessman. So he can see that there's a great opportunity for NCCO. But he lacks of technical background and also this kind of scientific ideas. So that's why when he tried to commercialize this NCCO technology, it didn't work really well. It just they just stuck for like several projects, but they're having different kinds of difficulties. I think the largest part is the technical part. So. When I was studying my PhD, I know about this technology and then I know about this company. So that's why I tried to do some help or some understanding about this technology and the company. And I think this is, first of all, the group, the company, all the colleagues are really kind people, are really good people. So that's why I'm willing to join the team and then help them using my scientific background to help them to solve what is not able to solve by them. So that's why I decided to join RHT.
Thank you, Cathy. That's a great example of how science and also business can collaborate together. Finally, we got another question for Expresii. This is again a bit tough one. It's about criticism. And they ask, if your digital art was being criticized as not a real art by people, then how do you deal with these criticisms?
Okay, first you have to define what's real art. Who is the questioner?
No names written here.
Is it one of you here? No? Well, okay, let's define real art means. Do you think it's a real piece of art that you can hold, or is it you don't think this is artistic if it's done on a computer? Or maybe people think, hey, if you undo, this is cheating. Is that what they mean? Maybe. Okay. Well, to me, again, tradition is it's like a river. It doesn't stop there. Traditions, okay, we have been doing this like this way, but we can extend the tradition by having a new tool, right? If everybody, say, when you do calligraphy, before the invention of the Chinese brush, maybe people are using a knife to craft on a piece of maybe bones. And if people really want to stick into the old tool, then there won't be any the brush calligraphy anymore. We won't have that, right? Everybody will say, hey, you're not crafting like what I used to do, right? Long time ago, when the Western fountain pen got introduced to the East, people would say that's not calligraphy, because only the brush calligraphy is calligraphy. That's what they think. But now people are accepting that using a hard pen, you also be able to do calligraphy. They accept it now. I'm a firm believer that digital tool is just another tool. You can use it to do digital calligraphy. You can do undo and redo, fine. You can erase. That's actually a better tool for some, because you can always go back, which you don't like. And nowadays, I think that's related to Kevin's doing. We are using cell phones and gadgets a lot. And how we interact with it is like we use fingers and okay, now people are promoting the use of pen. Why? Because they want the gadget to work naturally, right? And especially for we Chinese, people are saying, hey, nowadays people use fingers to stroke. They no longer would learn Chinese calligraphy. So we're not banning the use of the gadgets, because it's really useful. It's a good thing. And it's also not reversible. We cannot ban people from using it. But what we can do is to create new tools to help us embrace the technology so that we can develop new ways of doing calligraphy, right? Now you no longer have to, traditionally you have to set a whole big thing in order just to do calligraphy every day if you want to practice it. Now, the invention of the bottled ink has helped a lot. Also the, what they call the the brush pen, you just can write and write without using a bottle. Now it's just another new tool. There's no mess, which is especially good for maybe the classroom. People, I know that children would like to have the mess, but the teacher doesn't. They don't, and so the parents, they don't like to have the mess. So it's just another new ways to do things. So, okay, I think that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Nillson, indeed, innovations always start with new, and they all start up with something very weird, but sooner or later they will become a part of our life. And that's a lot of things the same way. I understand many people here still got questions, and I see you almost writing a letter. Okay, yeah, we got time for you to mingle, definitely. But before that, we would like to have a group photo.